The Steam Deck reviews are in. Well, the day is finally here. It's February 25th, 2022, which means a very select few people are going to be able to order their Steam Decks, and they'll ship out on February 28th. And hopefully it doesn't take too long for those people to get this device in their hands, because the reviews are in and they are pretty dang good. Despite the fact that I was lucky enough to be grouped into the Q1 group of people who pre-ordered Steam Decks, my number did not come up today. I was not offered the ability to order a Steam Deck, and while I was a little disappointing, I am doing my best to get my hands on one as quick as possible. But as it turns out, the people in the Q2 or after Q2 gang might be getting the best experience overall, because while every review out there, at least all the ones I read, which there are over 100 of them, so I'm just focusing on the top ones I could find here, the hardware itself looks like it's performing just as it should, if not a little better, which is great, but the software is definitely coming in hot. We'll get into all of it in just a few seconds, but before we do, it would really help me out here on my brand new channel if you subscribed and set your notifications to all, especially if you're gonna stick around and watch the videos I'm making here. So I think we should just start out with the top level overview of the general consensus of the reviews. Thankfully, they are positive. I don't have to sit here and say, yes, this device we've been hyping up for almost a year now is coming out and it is a huge disaster. It is nowhere near that. The reviews are definitely good. Some of them are great, and they bottom out at around good to mixed, right? Like not exactly mixed, but they're like right on the bottom end of good, mainly coming down to the software, because it really seems like for people who are well versed in the world of gaming PCs, they're going to have the best time with this thing. And for people who are coming over from like a Nintendo Switch as their only gaming console, their mileage is definitely going to vary based on how much they're willing to dig into the OS and learn how PC gaming works. The first thing pretty much every review touches on is the hardware, and thankfully, like I was guessing in my dummy unit hands-on video, the hardware is well designed for pretty much every hand size out there. I noticed specifically in the IGN review that the reviewers said that they had to kind of contort their fingers to use those back paddles, which was a little weird to me because my hands fit perfectly on that thing, so maybe I'm just lucky. My issue, if you guys didn't see the video, was that my fingers kind of felt like they fit too perfectly on those back paddles, so I was kind of nervous that I was going to be pressing them all the time, but it seems like they're actually kind of hard to press, like you have to put effort into pressing them, which is great. Love that. And on top of that, I didn't really realize at the time that they're going to be programmable. So in most games, I'm definitely going to leave them off. I have the Xbox Elite Controller Series 2. I use it a lot for Destiny 2, but that's pretty much the only game I use it for. I have jump and reload mapped to 2 of the back paddles, and that's basically as advanced I get with buttons like that. But with more advanced PC games, especially MMOs like Star Wars: The Old Republic, for example, I could definitely see those extra buttons coming in handy. So again, I'm glad that depending on your hand size, I have big hands, I guess I can show them off here, it seems like these paddles are going to be just fine. It also sounds like I'm not the minority in the button placement category either, because when you look at this thing, the way the buttons are laid out, it looks absolutely bizarre. Having the D-pad to the left of your left thumb and the face buttons to the right of your right thumb, it just doesn't look right in pictures, but the second that I had the dummy unit in my hand, like right from the second that I held it, they felt perfect. Like they're right exactly where they should be. I tried closing my eyes and the muscle memory built up in like 2 seconds. It was not hard to remember where any of the face buttons were or any of the directions on the D-pad. So playing stuff like Mortal Kombat 11 or Dragon Ball FighterZ, if that's verified at this point, I'm not sure, that's going to be just fine on this device, which is great to hear. And on top of that, I only saw one reviewer out of the few that I watched complain about their thumb skin. We never really found out what this part of your hand is called. I'm going to call it like the meat of my thumb. One reviewer complained about that touching the touchpad when they were playing Dark Souls, but other than that, it seems like my guess was right. Depending on your hand size, that part of your hand should not be hitting the touchpad, which is great because that was the one thing I was really nervous about the first time I saw the Steam Deck. I was like, ooh, those are kind of big touchpads, and there's 2 of them, and they're weirdly placed, so it seems like your hand could be hitting them while you're playing. So yeah, I mean, for some people out there, it might happen. I'm sure it actually will, because people's hand sizes are all completely different, but just going off of Steam Deck reviews, it's completely anecdotal, of course, but it seems like they did a good job getting their best guess down. It was also just like a huge relief to hear that these touchpads work as intended. I have a Steam controller. I actually picked one up with all the possible accessories when Valve did that fire sale where I think they cost like $5 and all in it was like $20. I was like, why not? I'll pick this thing up and give it a shot because there's so many Steam controller profiles in Steam already. And when I got the device, I think it's really cool. I think it's actually pretty decently designed. The issue is it feels hollow. It's extremely light and the plastic just overall feels cheap. And those touchpads can be kind of hit or miss. Like you got to build up the perfect kind of muscle memory where you know how much pressure you have to apply to them to get them to register just right, but it seems like with the Steam Deck, they have completely fixed that issue and no one complained about it feeling cheap, and I'm assuming that's because of all the parts giving it some heft that the controller itself does not have. Like, you've got a lithium-ion battery, you've got a screen, you've got all the controller components, you've got an SSD, like all of that stuff adds up to weight, and when you have weight in a device like this, that kind of makes it feel more premium just by design. The one issue pretty much every review out there mentioned across the board is the fan. Apparently this thing is always running and it kind of has a high-pitched whine that overpowers every game you're playing, even at max volume settings. Obviously, if you wear a pair of headphones, that's going to negate it, but while that is a solution, it's not great that the fan is always running and super loud. Like, if you're playing on a plane, that could get a little embarrassing, or if you're playing in bed and you're sleeping next to someone, that fan could keep them up, especially hearing that, yes, it is a high-pitched whine that you'll be hearing. Hopefully, Valve can kind of fix this through software. I'm not sure if they'll be able to, but it seems like they're updating the thing every day. So by the time people get their hands on the device, it could be not an issue anymore. But since it is a hardware thing, like with the fan, I think it could just be a hardware limitation of the device. So hopefully Valve is taking notes for the Steam Deck 2, or even they revise it for a later batch. My main gaming machine in general right now is a Razer Blade Advanced model with a 3080 in it, and that fan is always running. Before that, I had the same Razer Blade but with a 2060, and before that I had one I think with a 1060 in it. Every model that I've ever had of this device has had a loud fan, and I just got used to it over time. It really didn't take that long, and those fans, because they're laptop fans and there's two of them, I think they're probably going to be a little bit louder than the Steam Deck, but still, it's annoying at first. It takes a little bit to get used to, and you know, some people just might not be able to deal with it. It's completely subjective. So if fan noise bothers you, you might want to wait to see what Valve says about this thing's fan being loud and whiny. Now we got to get to the elephant in the room, the biggest issue every review had with the Steam Deck across the board, to the point where a lot of them have the subtitle that the device is not ready for mass consumption yet, is that the OS is definitely coming in hot. Like, this thing seems like it's buggy. Of course, we kind of knew that would be the case, considering that Valve was pushing daily updates pretty much the entire time that reviewers had the device in hand, like to the point where in his newest review, Linus said that minutes before they recorded it, Valve pushed out a huge update that seemed to fix a lot of the issues he was going to talk about. Yeah, I think a lot of people expected that this thing was going to be buggy, but it does seem like there's some pretty critical issues. Some reviewers were talking about the Wi-Fi cutting out, the Bluetooth cutting out. Xbox controllers would work fine until you would get to the main menu of a game, and then the vibration would just go crazy. Games were crashing, SD cards were having issues, and yeah, all of these problems can easily be fixed by just rebooting the device. That seemed to fix it literally every time for all these reviewers. But as someone who has limited gaming time, like after work, I come home, I want to play some games. The worst thing as a PC gamer that I have to deal with constantly lately is tech support for developers who are releasing unfinished games and unfinished products. But with the Steam Deck, I feel like I'm going to give this thing more slack because it's a new device running on a new OS, and I'm just generally very excited for it. Like, that hype is so built up in me that I'm going to deal with those tech issues. When the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation Vita came out, I dealt with the tech issues that those devices had because I was just so excited about the promise of the future on both of those handhelds. And I'm telling you right now, after seeing what's wrong with the Steam Deck's OS and hearing the like nice comforting words that Valve has been consistently updating it pretty much every day, and when people actually get their hands on it, it's going to be even better, that kind of gives me the peace of mind I need to just keep my hype. I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a huge issue for me personally, right? Again, I haven't played anything on the device, it could get super annoying, but just I know myself, I know how I interact with tech, and I know what bugs me. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna feel just fine with the Steam Deck. And after hearing that, I'm sure the After Q2 gang is kind of like wiping their brow like, dang, maybe it's a good thing I have to wait, because by the time you get your hands on it, it could be just completely totally fixed and none of these issues will even apply to you. Out of all the reviews I watched for just like a surface level analysis of how the Steam Deck runs, the two I would really recommend digging into are Linus Tech Tips review and Digital Foundry's review, because they both kind of offer different experiences. Linus is more about the hardware, he's talking about the OS, they're gonna save games for later. Digital Foundry digs into the actual games and gives you a baseline general summary of what you can expect out of the Steam Deck. And just jumping into the Digital Foundry video real quick, you can expect PS4 settings out of the Steam Deck, which is crazy. The first game they tried out is Control, and at a mix of medium and high settings, it was actually pushing around 49 to 50 frames per second. It did have a little bit of stutter, but when they locked it at 30 frames per second, it was a done deal, ran absolutely flawlessly. The frame time graph across the board was was perfect. And so yeah, I'm going to be running that game at 30 frames per second on the Steam Deck if I can get higher settings out of it. The battery will last for around 4 hours versus 2, which is great to hear for me personally because I fly home to Michigan from LA a lot. It's about a 4.5 hour flight. So with a battery bank, I want to be just fine playing Control at 30 frames per second at some high settings. That's absolutely crazy. Death Stranding at its default settings, which is PS4 settings, was the exact same situation. It ran incredible at 30 frames per second and it ran around 50 frames per second with the frame rate unlocked. Forza Horizon at high settings across the board was pulling around 35 frames per second unlocked, but again had no trouble running at 30 frames per second with that locked, and it had no stuttering, which is great to hear. And Horizon Zero Dawn ran at a locked 30 frames per second at original settings, which is PS4 setting. That was just exciting to hear on its own because I played Horizon Zero Dawn on the Aya Neo Next, and I would consider that experience unplayable. I dropped it to the lowest settings. It was extremely hard to get it to run at just even 30 frames per second, and it just looked so bad that I was like, why am I even messing around with this? So to know that it runs at console settings at 800p at the same frame rate as the PS4, that is like music to my ears. That is so exciting. I'm not going to list every game they tested because you should definitely just go watch the video, but yeah, as a whole, it seems like for the games that Valve recommended, at least, this thing is running them absolutely fine, and yeah, that's what I want to know. If it runs games well, and it seems like it runs games well, that's awesome. And when you get past these technical issues with the general OS, it seems like they did a really good job giving Steam a facelift. Everything from the library to the store page looks really well optimized for a handheld, which again, after using Windows 11 on the Aya Neo Next, I am just excited to see a handheld designed OS because yeah, it's really inelegant and poorly optimized on that device. Windows 11 is not a great experience on a handheld overall. So yeah, Valve did a great job visually from what it looks like. And the coolest thing I saw was just tabbing over to Linus's friends list, seeing all of his friends, and then seeing a chat work. He also said that the microphone is mid-grade, which is better than anyone was expecting. Like, you can use the voice chat that's built into Steam on the Steam Deck just fine, and it works. Excited to hear that. That really brought me back to the PS Vita glory days of messaging my friends, seeing my trophies, playing cross console, all that stuff that seems so advanced that the Nintendo Switch still really can't do, which is absolutely insane. And all of this is free on the Steam Deck, right? Like, Steam's online services, knock on wood for now, are not paid. So yeah, you don't have to pay for PS Plus, you don't have to pay for Switch Online, you don't have to pay for Game Pass or Xbox Live. All of this is just included with Steam OS, and that is great because you're paying $400 for the device. You shouldn't have to pay more for the ability to use its online features. Call me crazy. And for people who plan on using both the internal storage and a micro SD card, thankfully it does look like it's very simple to switch between libraries. I was pretty much expecting that because in my laptop I have 2 NVMe drives, so I have 2 Steam libraries, but once you add that second Steam library, it's totally seamless, right? Like, when you go to download a new game on Steam, you can pick which library you're downloading to. It's dead simple. So I'm glad that not only did that translate over to the Steam Deck's new visual update very well, but it also looks like it was improved. The store itself looks like it got a pretty good facelift to be able to work right on a handheld, and that's awesome. They even included a new section on the Steam store called Great on Deck, so you can see games that run great on deck. The one thing Valve needs to figure out though is a first-party, like, proprietary Valve website where you can log into Steam, see all the games that are going to run well on deck, like all the verified games, and if you don't want to look at your entire library, you can just search up a new game and see how it runs. I know there's third-party options out there. We've talked about ProtonDB, and there's a couple other ones, but yeah, I want an official way to do that from Valve. I don't feel like that's a lot to ask. Unfortunately, a lot of the reviewers didn't have access to the graphics drivers, so they couldn't install Windows and test it out even if they wanted to. I feel like they should have been able to test it before the thing came out, but that's not why I feel most people are buying the device. They want to use the software Valve came up with because that's what's optimized for the Steam Deck. Yes, you are losing out on a few games like Apex Legends and Destiny 2 at launch on the device, which is a little bit of a bummer, but all of the actual anti-cheat software people have talked about how they've got it working just fine on the Steam Deck, so it's up to the developers at this point, and I'm assuming that once the demand is shown and people actually get these things in hand and the device cannot be ignored anymore, we'll see these games updated pretty quick. But yeah, I've been playing the Witch Queen a ton this week. I need that on the Steam Deck. I'm not going to install Windows right away just to play Witch Queen. That seems like a bit of a stretch when I have, you know, multiple devices that can run it, but that's a game that I really want to play sooner rather than later on a handheld. So yeah, the overall consensus on the Steam Deck is that it's really good. good. It's just as incredible as we were hoping it would be. It lives up to the hype. It just might not be completely ready yet for mass consumption. Again, your mileage is going to vary depending on how into the PC space you are, but I don't think anything I saw in any review is enough to say don't buy it when your ticket is pulled. It seems like they are updating it constantly, like to the point where new updates are coming out every day. Valve is committed to making sure this thing works right, and I'm just willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because of how cool this device is. Of course, that decision is up to you. I will have an actual review of the device when I get my hands on it. Hopefully that, again, is sooner rather than later. But yeah, this is a good day. I'm excited. I hope my number gets pulled soon, and I hope yours does too. Make sure you let me know what you think of the Steam Deck and all of these reviews down in the comments below. And remember, if you like these videos and you genuinely want to see more, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, make sure it's set to all so you get a notification when I upload. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Shape on.